So thank you for showing up on Saturday afternoon, and welcome to Mr. P. Chidambaram, who's taken out the time to come to Nalsar. We hope that everyone will take something away from this discussion. So while we did request Mr. Chidambaram to speak about the union budget, maybe there might be some scope for other questions as well. So possibly the lecture will be for the better part of an hour, followed by some time for questions. So as a token of appreciation, I'd request the Vice Chancellor to hand over a small bouquet. And I think this is not the time or space to be giving any formal introduction. So without wasting any more time, I'll request Mr. Chidambaram to take over the mic.
What is this? Take it. Can you take it? Okay. I can keep this on top. Vice Chancellor, faculty, my young friends, I think that thank you for showing up on Saturday was meant for me and not for you. I suppose, like any other institution, this institution has had the unfortunate experience of speakers not showing up when they promised to show up. This visit has been long overdue. I think Prabhu and others have been trying for the last 6 or 7 months. And I'm glad that I'm able to come today. And in a sense, I'm happy that we have chosen a date which is shortly after a watershed event that happens every year in the economic calendar of India. The budget is an important document. Budget day is an important day. The budget speech is an important speech. Perhaps not many law students would seem to think that the budget is of great concern to them. Actually, it is. There is nothing in this country, no activity in this country, which is unaffected by the budget and what the government does in terms of economic management. Take a simple thing like the loans that some of you may have taken from a bank. Education loans. That is affected by the budget. If you're lucky to have got a fixed interest rate, then I can only compliment you for your luck. But if you've got floating interest rates, the budget will affect you. Those of you who are in the 4th and 5th year are looking for placement. The budget affects the placement market. Many of you may not go to a law firm, may go to a corporate firm. The budget affects whether corporates will grow, whether corporates will invest more, whether corporates will create jobs. Only yesterday we lost 5,200 jobs because Aircel closed down. Last month, over 6,000 or 7,000 people lost their jobs because Reliance Communications closed down its wireless consumer business. Clearly, both were fallouts of telecommunication policies followed by the government, impacted by the kind of levies that we put on that sector, driven by the requirements of the budget. So if any of you thinks that the budget is a statement of income and expenditure with which you are not concerned, I think you should disabuse yourself of that notion. In fact, it is the budget speech that sets the tone for what the government will do and what the government will not do over the next 12 months, or perhaps even over the next 24 or 36 months. Every budget has a context that is objective. Every budget must have a purpose that is subjective. What is the context of budget 2018-19? No finance minister starts on a clean slate. He has a set of objective factors staring at him, and he has a purpose in mind, or one assumes that he has a purpose in mind, and therefore he has to write a budget which takes note of the context and advances the purposes that he may have in mind. The context today is, while the world growth rate has been steadily rising since the middle of 2016, India's growth rate has been steadily declining since middle of 2016. It's not always such a thing happens. If the world growth rate rises, normally one would expect India's growth rate to rise. If the world's growth rate declines, one would normally expect that India's growth rate will fall. But this is an unusual event. If you look at the last 8 to 10 quarters, while the world's growth rate has risen steadily, India's growth rate has fallen, which is what the chief economic advisor actually is, the chief economic non-advisor, because nobody in government takes his advice. The chief economic advisor calls it decoupling of India's economy from the world economy. The first time I've come across this phrase in the economic surveys that I have read over the last 20 years, that India's economy has been decoupled from the world's economy. Well, why did it happen? It's a long story. We'll save it for another day. But the fact is, India's economy has steadily declined in terms of growth rate. It is growing still. I mean, it's nobody's case that India is in a recession. It's nobody's case that India is into a depression. India is growing, but not growing as fast as it should, not growing as fast as it can, given the fact that the world's economy has risen steadily. And last year it was perhaps 3.6%. This year it's expected to be 3.8%. And next year it's expected to be 3.9%, which in terms of world growth is very robust growth. The second context is the great windfall that this government reaped between 2014 and 2017. That story is over. I still remember a day in July 2008 when the price of crude oil touched $143 a barrel. throughout the 10 years of the UPA government, the price did not fall below $100 a barrel except for a short period. The average was over $100 a barrel. Shortly after this government took over, happened something which nobody expected to happen. The prices of crude oil collapsed. Likewise, the prices of commodities collapsed. The price of crude oil went below $40 a barrel. For many, many months, it remained below $40 a barrel. Just now, over the last 3 or 4 months, it has crept back to about $60, $63 a barrel. So it's a huge windfall. The difference between $100 a barrel and $40 a barrel is a huge windfall. And the government actually basked in that unexpected sunshine and practically spent away all that windfall. Today, it faces a situation where prices of crude oil are likely to rise. It may not rise to $100 a barrel, but clearly the windfall opportunity is over. So given this context, what was the purpose of the budget? I think the economic survey sets out what a budget should do. The economic survey is tabled a couple of days before the budget, and it gives a hint into what the chief economic advisor thinks is absolutely necessary, and it gives a benchmark against which you can measure the budget. I agree, the economic survey is not exactly the words of the finance minister. It may surprise you to know that in this large ocean of control and control thinking, there is a small island of autonomy known as the Economics Division of the Finance Ministry. The Chief Economic Advisor and his team have a large degree of autonomy in writing the economic survey. So one can set a benchmark and say, well, this is what the economic survey thinks should be done. And then 3-4 days later, we can ask ourselves the question, did the budget meet what the economic survey expected us will follow? Now, what did the economic survey say? The economic survey reached some very important conclusions. Firstly, and in fact, most importantly, the rest are not as important, that India faces 3 main challenges after 4 years of this government. They are education, employment, and agriculture. These words are there in the introduction. These words are there in paragraph 1.31 to paragraph 1.33 of the survey. After 4 years, the economic survey confesses that we have failed to address the challenges of education, employment, and agriculture. If this was a political meeting, I would be tempted to ask, if after 4 years you guys have not addressed education, employment, and agriculture, what the heck have you been doing for the last 4 years? These are the most important challenges. The second conclusion is that the level of real agricultural growth and real agricultural revenues has remained constant. Now, this is a very powerful indictment of what has happened in the last 4 years, and it probably explains why there is so much ferment in rural India. What does this mean? Real economic growth and real agricultural revenues have remained constant, which means relative to the non-agricultural economy, the output of the agricultural economy in real terms, that is adjusted for inflation, has remained constant. Relative to non-agricultural income, the income of farmers in real terms has remained constant. And the conclusion is obvious. Relatively, the farmer has become poorer. Relatively, that sector has become poorer. This completely confirms what the Nobel laureate Thomas Piketty has been writing. In India, inequality is growing. Inequality is growing among the top 1% and the next 10%. Inequality is growing among the top 10% and the next 10%. That's one kind of inequality. You can live with it. But if there is growing inequality between the farm sector and the non-farm sector, between farm income and non-farm income, the gap is widening, means that 55 to 60% of the people of India who are dependent on agriculture as the main source of livelihood have relatively become poorer. That's not good at all, which is why there's so much ferment. Which is why when young men send a call to farmers to mobilize, thousands and thousands of people rally to hear young men like Kanaya Kumar or Hardik Patel or Jignesh Mevani. There's so much anger, there's so much ferment, there's so much pain in rural India, which I think we will ignore only at our peril. The third conclusion, and I'll run through them very quickly, that the major flagship programs of the government have not resulted in tangible outcomes. The major programs are the Swachh Bharat, the Jan Dhan, the LPG connection, and the Deen Dayal village electrification scheme. Well intended, certainly necessary for India, but the economic survey says we are not able to measure tangible outcomes of these four programs. They've been launched, money has been spent, huge amount has been spent on advertisement, claims are being made, but we are still not able to measure the tangible outcomes of these programs. And then they go on to illustrate how toilets have been constructed, but the bulk of them are not in use because there's no water. While Jan Dhan accounts have been opened, a very large percentage have no money being put in or taken out. That the village electrification program has great objectives, but the definition of village electrification leaves much to be desired, because there is one bulb in the panchayat office that is taken as village electrification. All that is clearly documented. So there are no tangible outcomes yet of these programs. Finally, the economic survey says that there are two underlying macroeconomic vulnerabilities: the fiscal deficit and the current account deficit. And therefore, to overcome these vulnerabilities, the economic survey concludes by saying, we hope that the world economy maintains its growth momentum and oil prices do not persist at current levels. So virtually they're throwing in the towel. Virtually the economic survey says there's nothing much we can do about it. We hope that the world economy will continue to grow. We hope that oil prices will not rise. And finally, we hope that private investments will take place. And we hope that exports will recover their momentum. So that's the picture presented by the economic survey. So one expected that 2 days later, when the finance minister presented his budget, there will be a bold statement of purpose. One hoped that they will recognize the gravity of the problem, acknowledge that the economic growth is in the decline, acknowledge that out of the 4 engines of growth, practically 3 have sputtered to a halt, and I'll explain that in a moment, and therefore announce some bold measures. What are the 4 engines of growth? The 4 engines of growth in an economy are public investment, which is government expenditure. Second is private investment, which is what industry, business invests in terms of new capital. Third is private consumption, which is where the households, individuals are buying more goods and services. And lastly, exports, which means our people in other countries buying our goods and services. So these are the 4 engines of growth. This is true of all countries. If more people in India buy more goods and more services, and more people abroad buy more Indian goods and more Indian services, there is an incentive to produce more. If you have an incentive to produce more, you are required to invest more. And when we invest more and produce more, and there are more people outside India buying Indian goods and services, you export more. All this drives growth. The other thing that drives growth is government expenditure, which is, of course, to a large extent, is under our control. We can decide whether we will spend this year 20,000 rupees on health, or we will spend 40,000 rupees on health. That's perfectly possible. But the other 3 engines are not entirely in our control. The other 3 engines depend upon millions of people taking decisions. For example, if there are 50 crore people who buy toothpaste, this is a common example that is given in a business school. If 50 crore people are buying toothpaste, if 50 crore people decide one day, listen, there's still a little more paste left in my tube, and let me try to squeeze out the last few bits of toothpaste for another week. You know what that means? It means that consumption will be cut by 25% next month. My barber told me his business is down by 50% after demonetization. I asked him, why? Are people not cutting their hair or people growing bald? He said, no. People come to cut their hair, but they're no longer enjoying that luxury of having a shave along with a haircut. They rather prefer to shave themselves. People are coming to cut their hair, but they're not coming once in 4 weeks, they're coming once in 6 weeks. People are coming to cut their hair, but they no longer say, let me have a pedicure. And when all these value-added services disappear, his custom falls by 50%. It's consumption which drives production, and production which drives investment. Why do you think soap companies advertise their soap? We all know they are soaps, but why do they advertise? The advertisement is to entice you to buy one more bar of soap. Advertisement is to entice you to buy one more bar of chocolate. Consumption is not bad. In fact, in a market-driven economy, consumption is the only way to keep the economy going. So one would have thought that the budget will recognize that the economy is in the decline, the 3 engines are sputtering, and the only way to get these engines going is to somehow stimulate consumption and stimulate investment. Unfortunately, if that was the purpose of the budget, I think a responsible finance minister should have kept that as the top 2 objectives of the budget: how to stimulate consumption, how to stimulate investment. This budget has failed. This budget has done nothing to stimulate consumption. This budget has done nothing to stimulate investment. Let me quickly illustrate that. If you look at the finance bill towards the end, you will find that customs duties have been increased across the board over a wide variety of projects, from fruit juices to footwear. Now, this is completely retrograde. Only 4 days ago, the Prime Minister went to Davos and said, we want world trade to grow. We want an open, competitive economy. An open, competitive economy is based on reduced tariffs. The world says, reduce your tariffs. That's the only way we can trade. If across the board you have raised customs duties by 10%, 20%, what does it mean? Imported goods will be more expensive and domestic goods prices will rise. A customs duty is a tariff wall. It's like building a 6-foot high wall or building a 8-foot high wall. An imported good has to jump over that wall. If the 6-foot high wall, some goods would be able to jump over that wall. If it is an 8-foot high wall, many goods will not be able to jump over that wall, so that higher customs duties keep out imports. But what about the guy who's behind that wall? He's selling his product at 10 rupees because if an imported good is able to come at, say, about 10 rupees, he has the luxury of pricing it only up to 10 rupees. But if the imported good today cannot come at 10 rupees, it will come only at 12 rupees because customs duties have arisen. Now I have the headroom to increase my price by another rupee. So customs duties does not only deter imports, it also encourages price gouging. Prices rise. Now, as a result of these customs duties, prices are going to rise across. You won't find it immediately because the budget was presented only on the 1st of February, although these duties come into force immediately. It's only when imports are deterred. It's only when there is complete confidence that these custom duties will remain and the finance bill is passed by the 31st of March, you will find that domestic products prices begin to rise. If imported goods are not coming, if domestic products begin to rise, the result is obvious. There will be a general price increase, and a general price increase will mean reduced consumption. Now look at the investment side. Have they done anything to promote investment? Hardly any. Which is why, if you open the newspaper, you will not find a full-page advertisement saying, so-and-so company, Bhumi Puja, for this power project, 6,000 crore. You will not find a full-page advertisement which says, so-and-so company, brand new factory being inaugurated by the Chief Minister of Telangana, investment of 5,000 crore. You won't find that. That's not happening. That's not been happening for about 3-4 years now. No major projects are getting going for a variety of reasons. Privately, investors will tell you, industrialists will tell you why they're not investing. Publicly, of course, they will say that everything is hunky-dory. We've never had a better budget. When I've seen this over 25 years, I think they have a standard text prepared on the previous day, and they will just change the name of the finance minister and the year and release it. So I've never been greatly enthused by these encomiums showered by the chambers of commerce. In fact, my most favorite story is when the Prime Minister went to the Punjab and Haryana PHDCC about a month ago and said, bank loans, most of the bank loans have become NPAs because they are given to people like you, and most of those bank loans are fraudulent loans, and the audience clapped. I think it's a Pavlovian response. Whatever the Prime Minister says, one has to applaud. Whatever the Finance Minister says, one has to applaud. It is a Pavlovian response. So there's nothing in this budget to promote investments, nothing in this budget to promote consumption. If that is the situation, I ask myself, what does this budget do? It must have some purpose. Now let me try to list the purposes. One purpose could be fiscal consolidation. we'll put India on a more stable macroeconomic basis, macroeconomic stability. That's one objective. The second is, let's relieve the agricultural sector of the acute distress it faces. That could be an objective. It will serve at least 55-60% of the people of this country. The third objective could be, let me concentrate on the social sector. Let me ensure that the health sector, the education sector, child welfare, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, the very, very poor sections of society, they get some benefit so that their lives are a little more tolerable. Emphasize on social welfare. The fourth is go for broke. Reforms is the only way forward. We have already spent 4 years. The tenure of a government is 5 years. We have 1 year to remain. It's like the last overs of a one-day match. You will have to hit, say, 60 runs in 36 balls, and you've only got 3 wickets left. There's only one regular batsman playing. The other 3 are tail-enders, bowlers. So what do I do? I go for broke. I swing at every ball and see whether some of them connect, and maybe I will win, like South Africa won the second one ODI 3 days ago. So that's the way to look at it. Now, what does this budget do? Take each of the 4 questions. This budget failed the test of fiscal consolidation, and that's my strongest criticism of this budget. It will have very serious consequences. It already has serious consequences. They were supposed to reach a fiscal deficit target of 3% in 2017-18. Last year, they put it back by 1 year and set a target of 3.3% for this year. Unfortunately, the year is going to end at 3.5%. From 3.2 to 3.5. They're going to end at 3.5%. After this government took over, the goalpost has been shifted 3 times. And now the goal of 3% is being pushed back to 2020-21. This has already serious consequences. Bond prices have increased straight away. Bond prices have gone up. It's 7.8% or so. Interest rates, lending rates are slowly creeping up. Reserve Bank has made it clear it will not cut the policy rate. So this is going to be inflationary. Fiscal deficit by definition is inflationary, but the way it manifests itself is when interest rates rise. When interest rates rise, it will be inflationary. If some of you have got floating rate interest for loans, I'm afraid you are going to be impacted because these interest rates will rise. They have failed the test of fiscal consolidation. And out of this 3.5%, 2.8% is revenue deficit. I can understand if you borrow 10 lakhs of rupees to build one more bedroom to your house. I can understand if you borrow 10 lakh of rupees to lay a sprinkler pipe on your farm. But if you borrow 10 lakh rupees to go to the Hyderabad races, well, that's not a very wise way to borrow money and spend it. Fiscal deficit is borrowing. Government is borrowing money, but it is spending on revenue expenditure rather than capital expenditure. This budget has hopelessly failed in fiscal consolidation. Let's take the next one. Has it at least helped the agriculture sector? Answer is no. There is no relief to the farmer in terms of, I'm not making a value judgment here. I'm not saying should anything be subsidized or not subsidized. I'm not saying should any prices be reduced or not reduced. That is a value judgment. But if you want to help the farmer, you have to do something about price of fertilizer, price of pesticide, price of power, price of water. You have to do something about it. This budget is completely silent about any of these matters. They could argue, I don't have to say it in a budget speech, I can say it later. But so far they've said nothing. Which is why farmers all across the country have condemned this budget as having provided nothing to relieve the distress of the farmers. There's no loan waiver either. The only thing this budget says to the farmer is, I will give you MSP. This is the first of the three jumlas that I've spoken about. The three big jumlas. By the way, jumla is India's contribution to the English dictionary of 2018. You will find, take my word, 2 years from later, Oxford English Dictionary will have the word jumla, like we have many Indian words, kacheri, kichri. So many Indian words have entered the dictionary, this word jumla is going to enter. Suddenly in the fourth year, this government wakes up and says, we're going to give you MSP equal cost plus 50%. The farmer is asking, what were you doing the last 4 years? Why didn't you give it to us? Well, Mia Kalpa, we'll give it to you this year. The farmer then asks, which cost? What cost are you talking about? Cost plus 50% means you must define cost. First tell me what is the cost. There are three kinds of costs for the farmer. One is input cost. What is called A2. And the other is input costs. Input costs are fertilizer, seeds, pesticides, water, power. The second is A2 plus family labor. Because family labor has to be valued. Is it that the cost you're taking? And the third is A2 plus family labor plus notional cost for capital, which is land, the rent for the land, and notional interest on the financial capital. Because everybody puts in some money, you'll have to charge a notional interest on that. Land is used as capital, you have to charge a notional rent on that. If you take all that, is that the cost? That is C2 cost. So when the finance minister said, I'm going to give you cost plus 50%, next day, Dr. Swaminathan, Dr. Ashok Gulati, everybody, every agricultural economist worth his name said, which cost, Mr. Finance Minister? Are you saying 50% of A2? Or is it 50% of A2 plus FL? Or is it 50% of C2? Now, we are on the 24th day after the budget. There is no answer to this question. Why is there no answer? Because they announced the decision and now they're putting on their thinking caps to find out which cost shall be used. You didn't plan for it. You didn't provide for it in the budget. You just made this grand announcement in the hope that this will hoodwink the farmers. But believe me, no farmer has been hoodwinked. The very next day, in fact, on the very same day, I asked the question, which cost, Mr. Finance Minister, are you talking about? There is no answer for the last 24 days, and they can't come up with any reasonable answer. And unless you give the farmer a reasonable price for his produce, a price that includes profit, he's not going to be in farming. I don't know how many of you come from farm family backgrounds or rural backgrounds. I come from a rural background, not from a farm family background, but a rural background. I have hundreds of farm families who are my friends. Believe me, not one farmer, unlike a lawyer. What would you like your son to be? I'd like him to be a lawyer. A doctor. what would you like your son to be? I'd like him to be a doctor. What would you like your daughter to be? I'd like her to be a doctor. I mean, that's very normal. You think only politicians want their sons to be politicians. But doctors want their children to be doctors. Lawyers want their children to be lawyers. Businessmen want their children to become the managing directors and chairman of their businesses. I have not come across a farmer who says, I want my son to be a farmer. Have you? I have not come across a farmer. Not one farmer has told me, I want my son to be a farmer. Nor has one doctor told me, nor has one lawyer told me, nor has one civil servant told me he wants his son to fry pakoras. More or less the same attitude to this. They don't consider this a way of life for their children. And that's a sad development. And I'll digress. Take a couple of minutes to tell you that. India's requirements of food can only be met in India. There is no country in the world which can produce the food we need. We are 132 crore people. 10 countries in the world together cannot produce the food that we need. We have to produce the food that we need. We are not Singapore. If we are Singapore, you don't have to produce any food. You simply earn money, otherwise earn foreign exchange and import all the food you want. But we are India. We are 132 crore people. Unless we discover an alien planet civilization, which has got huge amounts of land, which can produce the food and send it to us, there's no way we can get the food from anywhere. There's no PL 480 anymore. I don't know how many of you recognize PL 480, Public Law 480. When wheat used to come in American ships, and the phrase was born, living from ship to mouth. That was what we were in the early 1980s. We can't be that anymore. Then our population was about 60 crore. Today we are 132 crore. If the farmer says, I will not produce the food, this country is doomed. Which is why Jawaharlal Nehru said, everything can wait except agriculture. Every finance minister must start by saying, what does this budget do for agriculture? This budget failed agriculture, and I accuse this government of failing not 55% of the people, all the people of India, because all of us are dependent on agriculture. Either we are producers or we are consumers, and if you fail agriculture, you fail the people of India. This budget focuses on social welfare, but that's a laudable objective. If you say, all right, our health sector needs to be fixed, our education sector needs to be fixed, these are in the directive principles of state policy, the statistics stare in our face, empirical studies reveal a very, very distressing situation. And I'll tell you one or two statistics. 1 out of 2 children in this country is anemic. That's not your sister, your nephew, my granddaughter. We're looking at the other child. But 1 out of 2 children is anemic. 1 out of 3 children is stunted. Height for weight, weight for height, stunted. And 1 out of 5 children is wasted. I hope you understand the meaning of the word wasted. Go back and look at a dictionary. Go Google what is a wasted child. A wasted child is a child who did not get enough nutrition between the age of 1 to 5, and therefore, for the rest of its life, its mental development and physical development will remain below par. That child is a wasted child. 1 out of 5 children in India is wasted. This is simply because we have failed to address nutritional needs. This is despite our enacting a National Food Security Act. Take education. What does the ACER report say? The AACR report says that a class 8 student cannot do simple arithmetic. A class 5 student cannot read a class 2 text. A class 5 student cannot tell the time by looking at the clock. And a class 5 student cannot do simple division. Unfortunately, we are becoming a divided country. There's one part of the country which is competing with the rest of the world. In fact, there are parts of India where the per capita is as good as a middle-income country of the world. But there's another part of the country which we don't see. Or if we see, we turn our eyes away. For every child who comes to Nalsar, who goes to IIM, who goes to IIT, who goes to Oxford, who finds a place in Harvard or Cambridge, there's another child who can't do simple arithmetic, another child who can't do simple addition and division. For every child who plays basketball, who plays tennis, who grows up into a gymnast, who wins the Women's World Cup in cricket, there's another child who's wasted. There's another child who's stunted. So for many, many more years, this country's government, this country's budget must lean in favor of the poor. You can call it by whatever name you like. You can call it socialism, you can call it communism, you can call it populism, you can call it vote bank politics, you can call it appeasement, you can call it by any damn name, I don't care. But the fact is, a government with a heart and a conscience must, in this country, lean in favor of the poor. So what does it mean to the rich or the middle class? Yes, of course, they will have to fend for themselves because they have got all other opportunities. But the government must lean in favor of the poor. What does this budget do? Let's only look at two areas of expenditure. Health and education. Let me look at health. In 2017-18, the health budget had 48,878 crore. By the end of the year, they spent 53,198 crore. For the whole country, the government of India spent 53,198 crore, of which the outlay in schemes is only 31,292 crore. If you look at both health and education, the incremental money that was allotted after borrowing extensively, as I told you, they borrowed as against 3.2%, they borrowed 3.5%, is a pittance, it's a fraction. What is the consequence of that? The consequence of this is, and this is not an indictment of the present government, this is an indictment of all governments, including mine. There are 1 lakh schools in this country without one teacher schools. There are hospitals, huge shortages of doctors and nurses and paramedical personnel. technicians. There are schools without libraries. There are schools without laboratories. There are colleges where the staff vacancy is so huge that teachers have to teach classes of 100 and 150. Which means that while the need is to do it today, because we are not allocating enough money, we are postponing the fulfillment of that need by 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. What does that mean to the health sector? What does it mean to the education sector? What it means to the health sector is many, many more people will be turned away from basic health care. Many, many more people will not get the educational opportunities that they need and the educational levels that they should attain. And here comes the next Jumla for health. We are going to roll out the world's largest national health protection scheme. This is a Jumla bigger than the agriculture Jumla. Only 2 years ago, this very government, this very finance minister, on the same 1st of February, announced a national health insurance scheme. In 2016-17 budget, most finance ministers hope that nobody remembers last year's budget or the year before's budget. Where nobody goes back and checks the budget speech. But there are some fools like me who do that. So we went and immediately said, this rings a bell, this looks familiar. So in a matter of minutes, thanks to everything being online, we discovered that the same announcement was made 2 years ago. The announcement then was, we will cover 6 crore families, namely 30 crore people, up to 1 lakh of rupees. That was the announcement. So we quickly tried to ask, what happened to that announcement? We found out there was no cabinet paper, there was no cabinet decision, no money was allotted, nobody spoke about it later, and the scheme was given a quiet burial. Today the finance minister stands up and says, in the hope that memories are short, I'm going to cover 10 crore families, not 6, 10 crore families, which is 50 crore people. And the coverage, no longer 1 lakh, the coverage will be 5 lakhs. And we're going to do it this year by Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. Gandhiji will be turning in his grave when he sees this announcements. He laid great store by truth. He said, Satyameva Jayate, speak the truth. How can you roll out a scheme of this kind? Is it even administratively possible to roll out a scheme of this kind? What does it cost? At 1% premium, it will cost 50,000 crore rupees. At 2% premium, it will cost 1 lakh crore. At a 3% premium, it will cost 1.5 lakh crore. Ask your father, ask your mother. If they have a health insurance policy, say to cover 5 lakhs or 10 lakh rupees for the family, they are perhaps paying 2.5 to 3% as premium every year. 15,000 rupees or 12,000 rupees they are paying. So we said, listen, forget these huge numbers. Have you provided at least 50,000 crore? Believe me, not 1 rupee has been provided in the expenditure budget. Not 1 rupee. And they are still saying, yes, we're going to roll it out by October 2. Well, you can always roll it out on October 2 and call an election on September 2. You can always say, I'm going to roll it out, just vote me again. This is a huge jumla. This is a mockery. This is an insult. This is a humiliation to the people of this country to say, I'm going to roll out the world's largest healthcare scheme. Just imagine the kind of debate Obamacare went through. Many of you read. Obamacare went through a huge debate in Congress. And after that, after great difficulty, the bill was passed. And they rolled it out. and the new guy is wanting to roll it back. But here, without a debate, without a plan, without a paper, without money, in the only hope that people's memories are short, you announce the biggest jumla of this budget, which is the National Health Protection Scheme. The third jumla, of course, is the jobs, and I'll conclude with that. What did this budget do to create jobs? Answer is zilch. Where are jobs created? 90% of all jobs in India, all non-government jobs, let us put it that way. Government has jobs. I think about a couple of crore jobs in all kinds of government, central, state, municipality, panchayat. Keep that aside. 90% of all non-government jobs are in the small and medium sector, SME sector. That's where 90% of the jobs are. But that sector has been virtually crippled after demonetisation and the flawed implementation of GST. I was telling a story over lunch. Tirupur is a huge garment center. And outside these huge garment factories, there are what are known as small units which do job work, like stitching buttons, fixing tassels. There's an area in Tirupur called the Old Bus Stand. Well, it continues to be called the Old Bus Stand for reasons which are obvious. They have built a new bus stand now. There were 5,000 units in the old bus stand where the man employs himself and employs maybe 2-3 workers. So these 3, 4, 5 guys will do the job work, supply to the large factory. There were 20,000 jobs, 25,000 jobs created. Today in Tirupur, there are 500 units functioning. 4,500 have shut shop. Go anywhere, Surat, Ichal Karanji, Moradabad, anywhere in India, Jalandhar, Hapur, anywhere in India you will find small and medium enterprises have either closed down or they have sharply cut back production because of demonetisation and flawed GST, which is a different story. Given that situation, should you not have done something to create jobs? This is where youth of India took offense when the Prime Minister said even frying pakoras and earning 200 rupees a day is a job. The definition of job under the ILO is it must be regular, it must be certain, it must be reasonably secure. You can fry pakoras every day, but there's no guarantee that all the pakoras will be sold. There's no guarantee that anybody will come to you on a very warm day or on a very rainy day. And there's no guarantee that the beat constable will not shoo you away tomorrow from the spot you're occupying on the pavement. It's an insult to the people of this country to say flying pakoras is a job. What young people want is regular jobs. Regular jobs. You must distinguish it from self-employment. And you must distinguish among self-employment ILO-defined jobs and not ILO-kind jobs. I'm a lawyer practicing on my own. That is self-employment. Many of you may join a corporate firm. Many of you may join a legal firm. That is a job. But even within self-employment, it must be self-employment which is regular, certain, and reasonably secure. That kind of jobs is not there. There's nothing in the budget to create jobs, to incentivize the creation of jobs, which is the second reason why there's huge ferment among the youth. The first reason is agricultural distress. The second reason is there are no jobs. No jobs for urban youth, no jobs for rural youth. Let me take a minute to tell you what kind of jobs you have to create. Most of you know only 15 or 17% of school-going children join college, which means the bulk of India's children stop with class 12 or below class 12. In fact, the bulk of them stop at class 8. And in that bulk, a huge number, huge proportion stops at class 5. We have to find jobs not only for Nalsar graduates. We have to find jobs for class 12 students, pass or fail. We have to find jobs for class 8 students, pass or fail. We have to find jobs for class 5 students, pass or fail. What kind of jobs can you find for them? Infosys is not going to employ a class 5 or a class 8. Amarchand Mangaldas will not employ a class 12. Therefore, India has to create all kinds of jobs, farm jobs, non-farm jobs, semi-skilled jobs, skilled jobs, highly skilled jobs, specialized jobs, professional jobs. And the budget must address it. Budget must say, yes, we understand that unemployment is a major issue and we are taking the following steps to address it, and must put its money where its mouth is. There is nothing in this budget to create jobs. So I conclude by saying this budget has failed the test of fiscal consolidation. This budget has failed the test of relieving agricultural distress. This budget has failed in promoting social welfare. This budget has failed in creating jobs. The only satisfaction I can draw is that, thank God, this team will not present another budget next year. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll keep about 10 minutes for questions. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand so that I can identify you, and we'll make sure the mic reaches you. So there are two hands over there. I think Lavanya and then Sudeep.
Thank you very much for a very nice talk. I'm going to digress a little. UPA 1 did all that you said that a budget should do. Yet the budgets you presented in UPA 2 failed the points that you set up right now. Could you please tell us why that shift took place?
Well, the answer is I did not present all the budgets of UPA 2. There was a more distinguished person who presented the budget of 2009, 2010 and 2011. Well, actually, 2009 elections, yes, 2009 July budget, 2010 February budget, 2011 February budget, and 2012 February budget was presented by another gentleman. I returned to the finance ministry only on the 1st of August 2012. And I did present the 2013 budget, and I presented an interim budget. So out of the 5 UPA 2 budgets, I presented only one. So I take responsibility for 20% of the sins. Okay. Now again, as I said, what is the context? When I returned to the finance ministry, I found that fiscal deficit had gone completely out of control and inflation had gone completely out of control. The current account deficit had gone beyond $100 billion. So I said, all this is in the public domain. I said, listen, I know I'll present the budget, but there's not much room to play. There's nothing. If your fiscal deficit is at 5.8%, if your current account deficit has gone to 3.5%, if your inflation is in the range of about 10-11%, there's not much room to do anything, except try to steer the economy towards fiscal consolidation. And I did consolidate in the 2 years that I had. 1st August 2012 to March 2014, I had about a year and 7 months. I did consolidate. I was telling the Vice Chancellor, we did bring down the fiscal deficit to 4.8%, a reduction of almost 1.4% in 2 years. We did bring the current account deficit down to 0.5%. We had to take very hard measures, like squeeze the import of gold, etc., etc. But I did consolidate. But there was nothing much else one can do. Given that context, I'm glad that I consolidated the fiscal balance sheet. And when we left the government, the fiscal balance sheet was certainly healthier. And we left, according to this government, CSO, the last year we left a growth rate of 6.4%. So that's the best that could be done in the last year and a half.
Good afternoon, sir. So I come from a rural and a farm background. So with utmost humility, I want to say that every single time, be it any form of government, UP or India, they both have they have massively failed to tackle the problems of the farmers. So we are also farmer. Every single year we have a loss of average 10,000 rupees. The question is, do we need to change our methodology when we address the problem or when we take the cognizance of the problem?
You're right. The farm sector requires many, many more radical reforms, some of which may not be politically feasible. For example, after 30, 40 years of land sealing laws, ask the question, and you can reflect on it, because I have no answer. What has happened is fragmentation of farm holding. Farm holdings have become smaller and smaller and smaller. If you have 2 sons in one family, fragmentation is bound to happen, unless one son abandons farming. Net result is the average holding in this country is less than 1 hectare. That is 2.2 acres. That is the average holding in this country is less than 1 hectare. Given that kind of fragmented holding, it's not possible to do major reforms in the country. Given that background, we have to do whatever is possible. According to me, price is the best signal to the farmer. You can give him any number of bhashans, but ultimately what he wants to know is what is the price I will get when I take my produce to the market. Take the UPA's record. Not a stellar record, but I'm presenting the record. Take the MSP of every produce in May 2004 and take the MSP of the same produce in April 2014. In every case, I've got the numbers, in every case MSP doubled. If we were giving 1,800 rupees a quintal in the first year of the 10-year period, we gave 3,600 rupees a quintal. If we were giving 180 rupees a quintal, we were giving 360 rupees a quintal. In every product, the MSP doubled. So we sent a clear price signal, which is why in that entire 10-year period, except that one drought year, you will find that agricultural input rose secularly. The agricultural output graph rose secularly. I'm not saying it made the farmer rich. In fact, my theory is no farmer can become really rich on 2.2 acres of land. He can never become rich unless he strikes gold or oil. There's no way he can become rich. How can you become rich on 2.2 acres of land? You can never become rich. The answer, therefore, is to find non-farm income for the farmer. He must have farm income, he must have non-farm income. And non-farm income is, of course, a number of things. Poultry, sheep rearing, cattle rearing, value-added products, flowers. That is the only way in which the farmer's income can be increased. It's a massive job. Agriculture is in the state sector. Center can only devise plans and give money. It has to be implemented at the state level. It's a massive job. I'm not saying that we succeeded in solving the problem or even laying down a blueprint for solution of the problem. All I can say in my defense is we ensured that the price signal was consistent and clear. Year after year, we told the farmer, you will get a higher price.
Okay, so I saw two hands. I think one student at the back, and then there's one more gentleman here. Yeah, please ask your question.
So you said that employment is a big problem in India, and after the introduction of AI, the employment is definitely going to go down because automatized jobs will be there. So according to you, what do you think which sector will be the biggest employer of the Indian people, as we see that there is a big demographic dividend in India, and India is becoming younger as compared to the other countries in the world. So which sector will be the biggest employer of the Indian youth?
See, as I said towards the end of my lecture, there's no answer to the question, which sector will employ India's youth? India's youth is not homogeneous. I just now told you there are class 5 failed, class 8 failed, class 10 failed, class 12 failed, BA pass, which is virtually nothing. What is a BA pass? What skill does he have? Electrician, a refrigerator repairer, a carpenter has more skills than a BA pass. Well, that's a fact of life. Therefore, there's no one sector which will employ. India's peculiar problem is we'll have to find jobs for this very heterogeneous mix of young people. We'll have to find jobs for class 5 failed. We'll have to find jobs for a PhD in physics. So every sector has to become employment oriented, including the farm sector. Farm sector can employ, research has shown, it cannot employ more unskilled pair of hands, but it can employ more skilled pair of hands. It might look like a dichotomy, it might look like a conundrum to you. Farm sector is overburdened by unskilled pair of hands, but farm sector is crying for skilled pair of hands. So even the farm sector can employ more skilled pair of hands. And one statistic which I quoted in one of my columns said, of all graduate students in all colleges and universities in this country, 0.5% join an agricultural college. Which means very few skilled agriculturists are coming out of colleges. But farm sector can employ skilled agricultural graduates. So across the board, you'll have to look for job opportunities. From fishing to, say, mountain skiing. In every sector, there are potential for jobs.
Yeah, there was one in the first row.
Sir, just to piggyback off the other question on jobs. This government, obviously, they've had many initiatives to create jobs. Startup India, Mudra, Make in India, and of course, they've had initiatives to make the youth more skilled for these jobs. But it just seems like things are not really moving in the right direction. What would you do right now to make those programs better, or to make people employable? Or would you just do away with them? Because it seems like Manrega has only gone up, especially, and people are going back to safety nets more and more.
I won't do away with these programs. I said in my lecture that these are well-intentioned programs, but they failed in implementation. Well, I've said it elsewhere. These are very incompetent managers. So you can have a great company, you can have incompetent managers, the business won't flourish. There's nothing wrong with Swachh Bharat. But once you assume that the toilet is those 4 walls and a commode, and that's it, and you don't want to listen to dissenting voices. For example, the Center for, Sunita Narayan's Center. Science, what is the center for? Science. She has written, researched, and pointed out that unless you have water and a system for waste disposal, a toilet will cease to be a toilet after a few days. Now, this is common sense. But what does the Ministry of Sanitation say? We have built so many toilets. What you have built is so many rooms. What you have built is so many rooms and installed so many commodes. But you have not built a toilet unless you ensure there's water. And unless you ensure there's a waste disposal system. There's no waste disposal. And Sunita Narayanan has demonstrated that waste disposal means it just, a drain is cut. It takes it to the nearest village pond. Now that makes the village pond worse. So there's nothing wrong with Swachh Bharat. Everything wrong with Amitabh Bachchan coming and taking a broom once a year. That's very wrong. If, in fact, when I meet him next, I'm going to tell him, don't do it. I mean, it's not even a photo opportunity. It's not even a sensible photo opportunity. Because rubbish is something which is to be cleaned every day, because rubbish is generated every day. You can't. And why should Amitabh Bachchan's broom be the symbol of Swachh Bharat? Actually, the municipal scavenger's broom should be the symbol of, he's the one who cleans it every day, not Amitabh Bachchan, isn't it? Therefore, I think we are mixing up schemes. Once you announce a scheme, it is being implemented. The same thing you can say about, I did mention about Deen Dayal Upadhyaya. Nothing, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya may have been a good ideologue, I don't know. And name a scheme after him. But I have flown over rural Bihar in a helicopter with Nitish Kumar, a low-flying helicopter. You will find, unlike in most parts of South India, you will find you can fly for 20 minutes. You won't find a single electric light after 6 o'clock there. Or you might find one bulb somewhere. And I nudged him, what is this bulb? He says, maybe it's the Panchayat office. Now you put a bulb in a Panchayat office and say the village has been electrified. Like what they are now doing. They are declaring villages as open defecation free. You've read that? Every month they will declare X number of districts are open defecation free. You know, they have declared a district in Chhattisgarh as open defecation free. And the BSF and the CRPF DGs have told me as late as yesterday, some of those villages are inaccessible. How did you declare it ODF? The paramilitary can't enter the village. But the Ministry of Sanitation has declared it ODF. Where did the toilet go there? How did the toilet get constructed there? How do you know people are using the toilet? I mean, this is the problem. Unless you have competent managers down the line, it's not enough to have a competent secretary or a competent joint secretary. You need competent managers down the line and systems that will monitor implementation of a project. Some of these projects won't succeed. Same thing with Skill India. We started Skill India under Ramadure of TCS, but it's failed because of not competent management of the scheme. I'm not saying everybody in any other party is a great manager, but surely India has no dearth of managers. We can manage, what is that? Satya Nadella is managing what? Microsoft. And the other guy, Sundar Pichai, is managing. If we can manage them, surely we can find somebody to manage all these things in India, isn't it? We must get competent managers. And not necessarily among politicians. There must be some politician. There must be some permanent civil servant. But more than that, we must get a cadre of very competent managers.
All right, last question. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Chair, too much biryani. Well, good afternoon from the United States of America. And first of all, I want to thank years of service. As an American politician, I know what types of sacrifices you've had to make for your family to serve the broader public. So thank you so much for your sacrifice. My question is on politics is, you talked about the different jobs that are available both in the civil service as well as in the government, but there are also jobs relative to politics and elected officials. And my question is, what type of advice would you give some of these students who may be interested in going or entering into a life of politics? There's a lot of challenges that come with it, but the reward to serve people is great. And so I just want to know what type of advice you would have for some of these students here. And before I relinquish the mic, I want to let the Vice Chancellor know I love Nalsar. Thank you.
See, it's an unfortunate truth that politics has become more coarse over the last 30 years. I think we've had years of very civilized politics, very decent politics. Yes, there were opposing points of view, vigorous debate, but politics was at one time a very civilized play field. Today it's become very coarse. I have seen the deterioration in the quality of discourse. Forget quality of debate, quality of discourse over the last 30 years. Secondly, although it pains me to say that, most new entrants to politics are no longer driven by any ideology or any great objective. The driving force to most new entrants whom I find is money. Not even power. Power, if you ask him to choose between money and power, he'd probably choose money. Which is one of the reasons why it has led to a coarseness of politics, because more and more people who enter politics pursue money as the principal objective. Then politics will become coarser and coarser. Despite all this, I would urge some of you to join politics. The price you pay for not joining politics is to be ruled by incompetent people. See, we belong to the family of law. This is a closed shop. I don't know how many of you understand the phrase closed shop. Our American friend will understand. It's a trade union word. Unless you are a member of the union, you can't have a job there. Law is a closed shop. Why do I say that? Because only lawyers can become judges. Only lawyers can become judges. Anybody can become a politician. Anybody can design a building if he knows the skills. He does not have to be a qualified. He might have somebody to certify it. Only lawyers can become judges. And the price that the system pays if good lawyers don't become good judges, the price you pay is you are condemned to argue before bad judges. Therefore, some of you must join politics. It involves sacrifice. But that's something I would urge you to consider, not necessarily when you're 25. In fact, don't join politics when you're 25. You will be taken over by the coarseness that sweeps across the system. Make a career. Establish yourself, become financially reasonably secure. Then join politics at 40, 45. There's no particular age to join politics. You can always join politics at 40, 45. Mohan Kumar Mangalam was a young communist, but actively joined politics only after he established a great career in law. So I would urge some of you to join politics after you have become a successful lawyer.
All right. So Mr. Chidambaram is also speaking at the Manthan Forum. So we have to make sure he gets into a car in a few minutes. But thank you, sir, for making the effort to come all the way.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all of you.